What's up, everybody? We're on a podcast now. I'm Alex, and in this video, we gotta talk about a Halloween game. What a surprise! A day after Gamescom opening night live, who would have thought that we would have got this here? Pretty excited. There's there's definitely some things I want to talk through, maybe talk myself through, in this video. But we got a trailer, we got some screenshots that I actually think give you a better view as to like what the game is. Watching the trailer is one thing, but I think the screenshots are another. And then IGN did an interview, and there's really only a couple things I want to take from there, but an okay amount of info, right? Starting with really number one, okay, this game being made primarily as there's actually multiple companies doing it, but Ilphonic, one that I'm sure many people have known about for a while now, and then Gun. Okay, so I don't know if that takes Gun, by the way, out of the running to do that another Friday the 13th game. Remember, we're actually getting another one, and it's probably going to be another multiplayer game like the 2017 one. So they're working together. This is a single player and a multiplayer game coming next year. Now, want to talk about that element in particular because originally I got very excited. Then I read stuff and I got discouraged. And then I read other stuff and I got excited again. So you see that title and you say, okay, it's probably not going to be like Hellraiser, right? Or A Quiet Place when we got that game, right? Hellraiser is more of, this is probably going to be a 6 to 8 hour, first person, just horror type experience, all right? It doesn't seem like that's what's going to happen here. Now, again, I originally see it and I say, oh, sweet. So they're having like a story, like, what cinematics and, like an actual beginning, middle, end. But then on IGN, they did an interview, and at first they made it sound like, and I think to a degree it's what it's going to be, it's just the offline bot mode. So they bring up the offline bot mode, right? Because some of these Ilphonic games in the past, right, they've introduced bots. I mean, even actually go back to Friday the 13th from Gun, and they introduced bots as well. Normally, these are not very good. In my opinion, they're really nothing. Now, they are experiences, and they are ways of making the game last, and last if you took the game offline. And I will say, beyond anything else I'm going to say negative about it, I do appreciate that. I can respect that because, they look at it a different way than what I'm about to say, but I'll talk about both. For me, it's about that preservation, right? When you turn those lights off, is there a game to be played anymore? And a lot of these games, the answer is no. Some of them, the answer is yes, because they do have the bot mode. Now, again, the negative that I would say is it's really not all that much. Like when you tell me that this game is going to be a multiplayer and single-player game, originally you got me thinking, oh my dear God, we're going to get this cool experience. Instead, it's probably just going to be you against bots. Now, in the interview, originally it sounds like that, and I think no matter what, that's gonna kind of be a part of it, right? So Ilphonic, they talked about how specifically Ghostbusters, they added the offline mode where you're pretty much doing the same thing you do online, and they noticed that people would buy the game, play the single player, and say, hey, you know what, this is a cool system, like the way the game's actually made. Now I'll try the multiplayer, right? They kind of looked at it from like the try-hard perspective where, and they said like the multiplayer, they understand it can get kind of rough, kind of extreme, because you have people that are trying really pretty hard there, right? So they want a way basically for newcomers to be able to jump into the game, understand the mechanics, and then jump into the multiplayer. So to be fair, that's not exactly the reasoning that I thought. I actually would say I'd be giving them more credit than what they're using a single player mode to drive you to the multiplayer. I'm trying to give them a defense and say, hey, you're doing a single player because if you ever shut the game off, at least you have a single player. I don't really think that's the reason, but whatever. That's a difference of philosophy there. But what I will say, later on in the IGN interview, they talk about, they try to press them, and they do say like they can't say anything. I think they say that's a whole different process, but they make it sound like it's going to somewhat follow the original film. Obviously, the aesthetic is pretty much the rest of that IGN interview was simply talking about the love and respect for John Carpenter and for Halloween. That they, microanalyze every intricacy of the mask, and they learned how telephones work, and they learned how things were back then, like calling 911 and stuff. So, and I do like that. I do think the interview, if you guys want to read it, you can read it. Largely, it just gives me belief that they care, which is, well, you hope they do care, right? But it very much sounds like those at the head of the studio, they're Halloween diehards. They really are trying to take this seriously. They really are leaving no stone unturned, right? Looking at every aspect of the film and doubling down. But when they talked about that element with the single player, that made it sound like maybe there was a story. I think the best case scenario is it's like a pretty open like mission structure. Like they tell you, hey, here's what's going on. As Michael, do this, or as these civilians, I think they call them, do this. And it's like, we'll give you a mission, we'll say it, maybe there'll be like an opening cinematic, a closing cinematic. I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not going to really expect, and I would imagine maybe you shouldn't expect this, like, don't expect Hellraiser. Don't expect when I talk about Scream and me wanting like a Telltale type experience for that game. We're not getting it here. At best, I think you get mission structures that loosely follow the films and maybe, do a little bit more, fill in some gaps. But largely it's you versus bots, or I guess bots or like you as the people versus a bot in Michael Myers. Okay, so it's kind of that situation. By the way, it's 1v4 or 4v1, depending how you look at it. I think the coolest element of this game, from the sound of it, and again, like watching the trailer, you do see a little of it. So like the theme of this game is, if you're the civilians, you're going around, or the survive, whatever you want to call them. You're going around like house to house, and you're basically warning people about Michael Myers, and you're trying to make phone calls. You're trying to literally, and you see that in the trailer, right? The girl runs, she talks to a person, and she says like, oh, there was a killing, all this stuff, and she runs out, and he runs out with her, and then Michael Myers comes. That is very cool, because, and I've said this before, like with every one of these games, like you can't have it be the same thing. And I will say, like, credit where credit's due, I actually do like Ilphonic, for as much as kind of skeptical as I'm being. Like, I've played pretty much every single one of these games. Like, Predator is different than Ghostbusters, which is different than Z game. It's every game is slightly different. Obviously, like, generally the 4v1 thing and 1v4, like, that stays the same, but how you do it kind of jumps around. So I like that potential, because, as Michael, you got like the stalker type vibe, and you can see that, even in the screenshots. But then as like, okay, well, what do you do if you're the people? It's escape. Escape is pretty much the main goal in any of these games, right? When you're not like the main villain. But what do you actually do? Well, you're basically running around and like drumming up conversation, with people, and warning them that he's out there, trying to get the police involved. The police are in, one of the screenshots. So that I think would be rather cool, because that also probably involves bots, right? Because if it's 4v1, and you have to maybe get like 10 civilians on your side, you're going to have to go out, and these civilians are going to have to kind of band together. So that kind of potential makes me excited, that gameplay system, because that's the new stuff. Beyond that, it's the same kind of structure, and then it's Halloween. And I will say, and I didn't even say it, kind of in the beginning of the video, it is pretty cool. I mean, we've talked about the potential for a Halloween game for a long time. As I've said in the past, I do actually think Halloween would make for a good Telltale, Until Dawn type style game. I actually think that would work, by the way. I've always said Scream, but I've also said Halloween as well. So that's just what happens. Sometimes when we get these announcements, I do get excited. I'm going to play it, much like I've played the other 5 Ilphonic games, but there's always a part of me that really wants them to go for it with single player. That's not what we're getting, but that doesn't mean I can't get excited. I am pretty excited about this. 2026, another game, by the way. Next year is unbelievably stacked, okay? Get ready. Buckle up your wallet and yourself, because you're going to need it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.